All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on this beautiful day. We want to thank you guys so much for popping in. I know that you guys are going to have a lot of great questions, and we encourage you to ask them throughout the webinar. This is part 2, so we're going to get into a lot of great information with Erich. And I want to say a big thank you to our amazing partners that you're going to meet later on in this webinar over at OnPoint, Fox AE, Stratejic, as well as HMR. We cannot thank them enough because of what they do. We're able to continue doing these webinars for all of you. And we have a very big month ahead. We've got like 8 brand new webinars that we'll be launching, and I'll be working on adding those to our website. So stay tuned to Connectionology.com. And we just came back from an amazing seminar in Jackson Hole. We had so much fun last week, you guys. We learned a lot. We met great people and really bonded. And I hope that everybody will stay tuned to our website as well for all of the live seminars that we have coming up, because our next one, I'm going to be launching in Savannah. And so if you happen to be in Georgia, Florida, any of the surrounding areas, and you'd like to come out there with us, stay tuned because all the information is about to go out. And then we have our Nashville TBI seminar next year that you do not want to miss. But let's go ahead and get started now because we've got lots that we're going to cover. I'd like to first introduce our wonderful moderator. Her name is Jessica, and she works with John Romano over the Romano Law Group in West Palm Beach. She's an incredible trial lawyer. She's also a Palm Beach County native, and she graduated from Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton with a bachelor's of business administration. And then she went on to go and attend the Barry University School of Law in Orlando, Florida, where she graduated early with her Juris Doctorate degree in 2013. But prior to joining John's law firm, she actually served as an assistant state attorney, where she gained a lot of invaluable trial and litigation experience. And then she joined the private sector, where she worked for a prominent civil litigation defense firm, handling a lot of complex litigation matters. But currently, Jessica has been focusing her practice on representing plaintiffs. And that could be anything from catastrophic injury matters, including wrongful death, auto negligence, medical malpractice, as well as premises liability and products liability. So we are so excited to have you back with us today, Jessica. It is such an honor. And I hope that everybody learns a lot, takes a lot of good notes, and just know that we will also make sure that you get the slides after this webinar as well from Erich. But have a great webinar, you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Ginger, and welcome back to everyone who joined us previously, and welcome to those who are just joining us for the first time. We have a lot of new stuff to go over today. I know we were hoping to get to it last time and we ran out of time, but thank you to everyone who's joining us to see the rest of our presentation. I'd like to introduce Mr. Erich Breedlove. He's a forensic specialist with over 11 years of experience in auto reconstruction and forensic consulting. He's worked on hundreds of accident reconstruction cases over the years, specializing in collisions with automobiles, tractor trailers, pedestrians, motorcycles, and bicycles. His background includes detailed inspections of vehicles and scenes and analysis of electronic module downloads for both automotive airbag control modules and tractor trailer electronic control modules. Mr. Breedlove also has experience with 3D modeling and 3D simulation using technologies such as Pix4D, aerial mapping, PC crash, and Faro laser scanning. Thank you, Mr. Breedlove, for being here with us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Glad to be back. Hopefully I won't be as long-winded this time. And yeah. So just to kind of review, what we're covering today is understanding and just appreciating in your cases that involved, collisions with vehicles, trucks, trailers, and other devices that have electronic data. We're just trying to kind of open everyone's eyes and kind of explore some of the opportunities or just some of the information that you may want to know when you try these cases, because, at the end of the day, this electronic data is the kind of stuff that can radically change the face of your case and give you a better understanding independently of what could have happened. So whether you're evaluating a case, you're not quite sure about your client, what they're saying, or maybe your client can't speak. Maybe they were, killed or don't remember the accident. Finding out ways to get this information is a great equalizer to understand, what could be possible. So where we left off, the last section, we were kind of just looking at, video of crashes, whether it's surveillance video, dash cameras from buses, and that kind of stuff. We're going to kind of step into brake system videos, and this is typically only in the commercial vehicle realm, and it kind of goes hand in hand with downloading commercial vehicles, heavy trucks, trucks and trailers, stuff like that. But there are a number of manufacturer supplied braking systems that are kind of like autonomous vehicle features, and we're going to cover some more of that for regular passenger cars in a minute. But you have a wide array of manufacturers that, they will provide information aside from just the typical telemetry that we're looking for. So you have Bendix, Volvo has a system, Mercedes has their own stuff on their trucks. Wabco is another brand. And while the names are all kind of different, a lot of what they offer and can provide is the same. And so just some examples. If you're looking at a truck and you're like, well, Eric, I don't know if my truck has anything. Well, the first telltale is when you're looking through the windshield of the truck is see if there's a camera mounted up near the center of the windshield. Here's an example of this is a Wabco one. So you've got a Wabco camera here, so that'll instantly tell us that we need to ask more questions. We need to try to get this data and make sure it's preserved. Independently of the heavy truck data that we would get from an engine control module, this video system can have an event trigger, like a hard brake event, that allows us to get pre-crash and post-crash data, and that could be everything from speed to the odometer, brakes, when they're applied, and so on. And I'll just say one more thing. This is a great way to verify the data you're getting from the ECM, and we don't always get an opportunity to get corroboration from two different electronic systems that are not connected, but sometimes that makes your analysis more thorough, because there's no way to really impeach both of them at the same time if they're both right and they both match. So a video clip, this is going to be your perspective, and it just kind of depends. This was obviously kind of a near miss, right? But being able to get that perspective is great, and it's similar to the DriveCam, dash cam footage that we showed, all those clips we showed last time. But it just allows us to get a perspective, and so the video is something we're comfortable with, we like getting, and it's really helpful in our cases. An example of some data that may be new is on these trigger frames. When you get the video frames from these incidents, you're getting some interesting information that maybe we don't get in the download, traditional download. One, odometer readings. Sometimes we get engine hours only, sometimes we get odometer, sometimes we get both. This gives us a scale in time to go back and look at these events to try to figure out which event is ours from a crash if there's multiple events on a system. And it allows us to kind of tie things together and understand the timing of things. There's also a lot of detailed information that maybe we don't care about, but maybe we want to know if the lane departure system was muted or turned off. Well, a lot of this is binary, so it's 0 is no and 1 is yes, or 1 is no and 0 is yes. But interestingly, on this truck, we can tell if that system was turned off by the driver. We can tell if the driver was using his windshield wipers. And even more exciting, we can see if they're using turn signals, which this capability has not really ever existed in any vehicle. So to be able to get an electronic confirmation that somebody used a blinker, that's a big one. We also get brakes, we get engine speed, we get the yaw of the vehicle. These are all accelerometers. So it's like getting us the data that we would normally get from a truck, but it allows us to just get more detail and answer really specific questions, that maybe we wouldn't have been able to answer before. So we're going to move on from that now. How many of you, and we'll do a show of hands without you actually raising them because I can't see any of you. How many of you guys have a navigation screen in your car? How many of you hook your phones up into your car? How many of you use the voice features in your car to maybe set an address, maybe to talk on the phone, text somebody? These systems are all able to be interrogated. And there's a software and a system out there that allows us to plug in, and essentially these are called infotainment systems. So it's that center stack in your car where the radio is. There's a couple of different computer boxes behind the dash that we can get to, plug into, and then pull the information off of. There's a company, it's Breedlove, And essentially, here's an example of one we've done. So we've got the nice, the nice screen, the radio, everything like that. And you get this full report, and it's extremely detailed. Understanding that they're all a little different and it's not real standardized yet. Certain vehicles, like I just had a client today I was talking with, that their download would have only hinged on the fact of whether or not they had OnStar or not. If they had OnStar in their car, then the infotainment might contain stuff. If they didn't, it won't. So, any of these things that are listed, these systems connect to your phones, they can connect to their devices, they can show features, they can show whether the doors are open or closed, they can show whether you're on the phone. They can also show your GPS location. They can show whether you're belted. Sometimes we'll get accelerations, speeds, delta Vs, which is really helpful if we didn't get a download on the car. Here's an entry from an Infinity, where we get call log entries so we can know if someone's on the phone. It's kind of a backwards way of doing it, because obviously you can try to get cell phone records, but I'm sure, Jessica, you've got experience with this. Sometimes it takes a while to get those records, right? And sometimes it's a pain in the butt. This allows us to get this information because your phone gives it to the car pretty much instantaneously when we plug in and download. We also get GPS coordinates. The sampling rate for this, the resolution, as I've said in the last presentation, it varies. In this car, it appears to be every minute, or actually every second. So 1 second is not bad, and that's probably enough for us to plot something and figure out a path. I know recently we used one of these. We had a dispute in an unlit road in the middle of nowhere, which car was going the wrong way on the wrong side of a divided highway. And it was alleged that our client was, but we actually were able to pull their GPS from their car and show that they're actually going the right way. So it proved that the other car was the one that had to have been going the wrong way on the highway. So, that's kind of a perfect storm scenario, but it's one of those things that completely made the case for our client, because, with no witnesses and nobody surviving in the crash, it's hard to know who was in the wrong. And this is something that told us. But you get, coordinates, you get distances from references, you get speeds, you get a bearing. And I've seen these that give you 1 or 2 every 3 or 4 minutes. I've seen these that give you 3 or 4 a second. So again, if you have questions about one, it's just something we would need to look the vehicle up. It's a vehicle by vehicle thing. It depends on a lot of parameters that are not exactly standardized yet. So any questions so far on any of that?
There is a question, Eric, and one of them, this may be more of a legal question, but if you have any input, I want to make sure that it does get asked. It says, what is the foundation that the expert has to establish to get this into evidence? And I haven't personally had too many cases where we've had to do this at trial, but it's similar to the foundation you would lay for an EDR. But right. Do you have any input on that?
As far as I know, and I look at the time of the question, it may have been for the truck systems video, or it may have been from the infotainment stuff. Yeah. We've used both. So in those 2 cases, I know we didn't have any issue getting them in. Mm-hmm. I know that Breedlove will the infotainment company, they will represent their product in court if need be. And I think that's also true for a lot of the trucking system manufacturers as well. Most times there's not really ever a dispute, because it's data that is hard locked, stored, and can't be manipulated. So there's, from a chain of custody, or I'm searching for the right word, to authenticate this data is real, typically is not an issue.
Yeah, I haven't had any challenges to that, so I don't really have any feedback as to foundation other than your typical foundation for these types of reports. There is another question. It says, for infotainment system information, is that if you're hooked up to the actual car system through Bluetooth? What if you're using CarPlay?
So anytime you set up your phone with a car, at any time, the first time it asks you a bunch of questions. Do you want this car to be able to access your contacts? Do you want this car to notify you to turn on, like, because I use CarPlay in my truck. And the first time I set my phone up, it says, hey, CarPlay is available. You want to use it? Anytime you set up that communication the first time, it's asking you permissions for things. So whether you're using just the straight infotainment screen, the nav that's built into the dash, or you're using your phone, there is a handshake and there is a handoff of data. Now, what is there could be different, but it kind of all depends on the car. And like I said, unfortunately, right now, with auto airbag control modules, we have a pretty good idea. I can even send you you tell me the make and model of your car, I'll give you a sheet back that says here's the data that's going to be there. This is still kind of early on, and it's getting more detailed, but like the example I gave with the Buick, that they needed to have OnStar. If they had OnStar and they had a certain package, I could get some stuff. If they had a different package, I could get a little bit more. But at the end of it, it basically said, or none of this stuff will be there. And so it's one of those things. I think 5 to 10 years, it will become more standardized. There's probably going to be some like Part 563 for cars. There's going to be some regulations put in place as well that allows it to be more standardized. And once that happens, then we're going to have a better understanding. But as far as I know now, anytime your phone is connected to a car, there's a possibility for data to exist.
Okay, and the last question says, how far back can you normally get information from the infotainment system?
The farthest I've seen in real world, like in a truck that was not being preserved, was about 6 months. I think, again, it all depends on the system, how much buffer there is, how much memory space there is, and what parameters we're asking it to tell us. Just like anything else, there's only so much it's going to store. It's going to override at some point, and it doesn't have like hard written event files the way that ACM or something like that would have. So it's always worth a shot to plug in, but I think each case is a kind of a case by case basis where you want to evaluate, how long ago did this happen? How long is the car put back into use? And understand that if it's been a year, it's been 2 years, it's likely not going to be there. And so do you want to incur the cost to try to find out? Sometimes you have to, sometimes it's the last thing last option you have, and you just have to know. But 6 months is the longest I've seen.
Great, thank you. That's all the questions for now.
Okay. So we're going to change gears a little bit. Let's see, 317. When looking at these vehicles with all these systems and all this data, it's only going to be a situation where there's just more and more development, and there's more and more things that we can look at and do. When I started doing this, it was airbag control modules or bust. That was it, and that was in 2010. So in a short 12 years, we've gone from that to now we're looking at dash cameras, now we're looking at phones, now we're looking at infotainment systems, and in another one here, we have these systems in Toyota, which a lot of other manufacturers have systems, but Toyota has been the first and the most accessible to reconstructionists and other parties. If we want to buy the software, they make it available to us. We can actually get in and interrogate some of these automated safety features that Toyota has. So it's called Toyota TechStream, and it applies to Scion, Toyota, and Lexus. It's a software that we have and that we manage, and essentially it's tied to the what's called Toyota Safety Sense 1.0 is the first version, and the vehicles are starting as early as 2013. So since 2013, there's been a possibility that a Toyota vehicle, in one of your cases, could have some extra level detail information from a crash that maybe you'd want. So what are we talking about here? There's lots of reports, one of which the primary one that we look at is something called the vehicle control history. There can be, this one's only 2 pages. Just to give you an idea, it's everything that the car is doing that the computer registers could be out of value or enough for it to want to take a log of and say, okay, I need to remember that. Whether you're hitting your accelerator pedal hard, whether there's sudden braking history, whether there's automated braking history, anything that could happen in the car where it just wants to take down a digit, take down a mile, and see how many times it's happened. And also, anytime any of these systems were triggered based on a lot of parameters, whether it's an accelerometer, whether it's a radar sensor, whether it's a camera system, whether it's a metallic sensor that's in a bumper that says you're about to hit something. What Toyota allows us to do, and especially in this instance, we've got a 2020 Highlander. This is going to be a Safety Sense 2.0, so it's a little more advanced. We get some great information. And the trigger is what we care about, because if we get a hard braking event, if we get a lane departure, we get an acceleration that it doesn't like, then we're going to get some other things. And the primary thing we want is images. Now, with all the technology, it's fantastic, but I joked earlier that, you know, they really did not pick a great camera for this. It's not the best resolution in the world, and this is actually probably blown up 3 times its size. The original thumbnails are about the size of where I'm circling my mouse. So obviously we blow them up, they get a little distorted, but we get this long time before the trigger, and we get all these increments that we can step through. I'm just going to kind of step through them slowly so you can kind of see. You know, we're driving down the road and it looks like we're changing lanes too. So we're coming from the middle lane and we're going into the outside lane. We're just kind of rolling on. And the car decides to turn. And at about a second away, half a second away, and then at the triggering event, there's a car directly in front of us, and the car picks up on that and says, "Oh crap, let me throw on the autonomous braking." And we vibrate the steering wheel so this person can try to avoid this crash. So you get braking, swerving, and avoiding, all from that system, which is great. We've had multiple cases where we've actually been able to get this information, use this information to, you know, reconstruct a collision, to get angles of impact. We've had motorcycle cases where you see a car, say, turning like this one, and the motorcycle is coming from the perspective of this video, and we get, you know, imagery of the motorcycle impacting the car. And so this is the kind of thing that, you know, again, like I've said a bunch of times, it's just one more layer of information that allows us to hone in on what happened in a crash, and give you detailed information to help, you know, advise yourself, advise your case, and help you move it forward or get it settled, or maybe walk away if it's not a good case. You know, coupled with this, we get a nice data printout, just like a download, where we get, you know, nice timeline. We got our triggering event. We have our speed in kilometers. Obviously, you can see the autonomous braking kicks in. We get a nice slowdown. This driver actually looks like they got on the brakes just before, which is nice. And you also get a nice plot of the steering, so you can see what they did to try to avoid this collision. And again, you know, in this case, say they hit and there wasn't a big enough impact to get a triggered event on the download. But we have this now. It's another way of getting this information in a sense that we would have never had before, just from a normal triggered event from an airbag control module. You know, again, pictures are worth everything. You know, we can come up with best opinions. We can, you know, be critical of what someone says they remember. We all know that people's memories are not the greatest, and you know, I think people's minds like to fill in blanks a lot of the time and answer questions that they don't really have the detail on. But these pictures tell the story, and there's no way to really argue that this is what happened. You know, you've got both parties in this car, and you know everything you need to know. But we've seen these types of events help us in cases with who had a red light. We've seen whether or not somebody's brake lights were working, lane departures, maintenance of traffic stuff with construction zones. You know, somebody claims there's a phantom vehicle, but there's no evidence of it. But then actually we get these slides and we see the phantom vehicle. I mean, that's a different way to approach these cases, where in the past you're having to do a lot of legwork without a lot of independent proof. So we got here a lot faster. It's a little before 3:30. So I don't know if Ginger, if you want to do your people now, if they're ready, because all I've got left now is the download and then questions. So this may be a good breaking point.
Yeah, this is a great time to go ahead and break. I'm going to go ahead and bring in a couple of our amazing partners so you get a chance to meet them. The first one is going to be Cody Roberts with Fox AE. Love working with this group, you guys. I'm gonna let him explain to you guys a little bit more about what they specialize in, but he's going to tell you guys and hopefully show you a little bit of demonstration today, like he's done in the past for other webinars. But he'll be coming in just a moment. There he is. Hi, Cody. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Okay, Eric?
Yeah, what was that, Ginger?
Oh, I was just going to close out the slides real quick.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, Eric. Yeah, thanks, man. You're speaking my language, and I didn't know that about the blinkers and the wipers and all that stuff. So what we do is we're a science and engineering graphics studio. So we take Eric's brilliant reconstructions, and then we create animations from that. And so I'll just go ahead and give you kind of a quick example. So we're talking about, data that you can download, but what happens when you can't download data? So last time Erich gave a presentation, we showed downloaded data and making that into an animation. And sometimes that data is not available, or it's overridden, or whatever. And so I just wanted to give you an example of what happens during a wet road collision where they're hydroplaning and there's no skid marks, there's no gouge marks. And so the plaintiff was claiming, well, I was sitting still, there was no downloadable data, so how do you show that? And so what we did was we showed that the skid marks can actually match some of these scene photos, but it's the skid marks from the actual grass. And so we can take that and we can match it up and then show it from different angles and show, well, maybe this guy was just texting, or maybe he was just not paying attention at the time. And so you can see he swerved out of his lane and hit a pregnant woman. And so not only do we show the how, but we can also show the wow. And so this is multidisciplinary. So we have board certified medical illustrators and engineers that can work closely together. And so we can specialize and talk to your medical experts and create a medically accurate demonstrative. In this situation, she had lost her baby, and she also, unfortunately, had some spinal injuries. And so we can zoom in as well and see those too, with interoccupancy movement, disc herniations, and actually showing them how it works. So that's kind of how, how we're doing it. And so I appreciate the really timely and really super relevant presentation. So thanks, Ginger.
I'm always blown away by like how realistic all these images are. And it just breaks my heart hearing about this case. I'm so sorry. But thank you for the ability that you're able to demonstrate this and help her in this case. It's really important. So keep doing the great work that you guys are doing. Cody, it speaks for itself. And don't forget to add your information to chat box so everybody can stay in touch with you, because you're doing good things over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ginger.
And now I'm excited because I see my dear friend Tamara is with us with OnPoint. We just spent all last week in Jackson Hole. We had the best time, and you are just more fabulous in person. And I wish everybody could have the chance to meet you, Tamara. Tell us a little bit more about what you specialize in with OnPoint.
We had an amazing time, Lisa and I, just working with all of you and the wonderful attorneys. And, we're working on some of them with cases and very excited about that. It was such a beautiful venue. I'm kind of missing that mountain view and air. We certainly don't have that here in Chicago. So thank you for allowing us to sponsor an exhibit and join you guys. It was awesome. So this is fascinating to me. I've worked on thousands of auto, motorcycle, and commercial trucking accidents and over 20 years. And it's amazing how much the technology, Erich, has changed. My husband and I just bought a new car in July, and I was blown away with all the electronics. I feel like this thing can like write your electronic checks and start your washer, while you're driving practically. But on a serious note, it's really phenomenal how much more information with all the electronics that can help, the people in these accidents. And so much enjoy Cody's work. And I'm a labor and delivery and NICU nurse. So seeing cases like that where babies are lost, I've delivered over 1,000 babies. It's incredibly sad. So we appreciate that. But as Ginger said, I'm Tamara with OnPoint Legal Nurse Consulting. We are a full litigation support team. We help our attorneys. We've been around over 27 years. We've got attorney clients in 40 states. We help at every step from the beginning of your case all the way through your litigation process and strategy, trial, and settlement. Our nurses, we have multiple teams of nurses that have hundreds of years of collective nursing experience, everything from L&D and neonatal and peds ICU, like what I did, to geriatrics and everything in between. We've reviewed everything from TBIs to complex ankle injuries. We have multiple programs, and each one has an admin person assigned and a program director. And you guys will be seeing Lisa, my colleague that we just got back from Wyoming. She'll be on Thursday. She heads up the consult program. And what we do in that area is we can do merit reviews, we can do detailed chronologies and timelines, summary analysis from the medical records and do reports for that. We can identify pre-existing conditions that are kind of difficult and challenging to determine if it's a pre-existing condition versus a new injury. Identify missing records that you might not even know you don't have that could be critical. We also do, and what we talked about a lot last week earlier within Wyoming, we talked about pain and suffering reports, medical cost projections, life care plans, and Lisa can get into a lot more detail with all the differences of those. So those can really increase your case value when we help you with those. If you need an expert, our program director, Dawn Montagno, heads up that division, and she can help with her team find fully vetted, clinically active experts from coast to coast and every specialty imaginable, and it's at no cost to you. If you need help with any cases involving the geriatric population, nursing homes, skilled facilities, home group homes, assisted living, our program director, Ingrid Sidorov, can help you with those. And you've seen her here and do presentations with Erich. Anything in the geriatric population. But really, we all interface and work together to meet our attorneys' needs. One of the things we pride ourselves in is very quick turnaround time and great communication. So there's no stone unturned. But really, our main goal and focus is to make the medical clear and understandable so you as attorneys and your legal teams can focus on the legal aspect of your cases. So that's kind of what, our main premise is. So if you have any questions about any of our programs, I'll put my info in the chat box and Ginger will have it on as well. Please feel free to contact us. As I said, we've got clients in 27 years in 40 states, and we would love to talk to you to become one of our next new clients. Thanks, Ginger.
Thank you so much. If you guys hear our mascot in the background, I was trying to go grab him real quick. But anyway, Tamara, thank you so much for being with us today. And don't forget to put your information in the chat box. We appreciate everything that you do. And I know that John Romano, their entire law firm, they love working with you and doing cases with OnPoint. So we really appreciate this ongoing work and everything that you guys offer. So
we love working
thanks for
with
being
all
here
of
with
you
us.
too. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Erich, back to you.
All right. So before I go on, any more questions about anything from maybe the first presentation you want to see again, or you got questions about? I don't know, Jessica, if you have anything while we wait, and then we can move into the fun of doing the download live.
No, I don't have any questions and I don't see any questions. Just everyone out there, if you have any questions, you can either put them in the chat box or the Q&A. We'll see them and we can answer them as we go. Like Erich said, if you guys have any questions from the last time, after reviewing the presentation materials that you want to ask, go ahead and put those in the box and we'll get to those as well. So Erich, if you want to go ahead and move on to the download, then, we can, as the questions come in, I'll let you know.
Perfect. Okay, so back in the beginning, we had that nice little graphic. I'll just kind of go back to it so we can kind of set this up. So CDR downloads are the most common. It's most vehicles, and they're kind of the easiest to manage. We know what to expect. We do dozens of these, if not more than that, a month. And so, it all begins with airbag control module. And so this is out of a 2019 Nissan Versa, so relatively new. Should have some good data on it. This is fully removed. You can tell that, we've got, different bolt holes. We go in, we take it out, and typically it's somewhere in the console. Then we undo the harness that sits in there. And in this one, there's actually 3 different bulkheads for plugs. And so we've got our module. So now what do we need to do? We go in the software, and I'll go ahead and bring that up. We open up our software. We say, okay, we're going to do a download on a 2019 Nissan Versa, right? So we go 2019. We figure out, okay, we have some coverage. And like I was saying earlier, as all these other methods of downloads progress and become more common, I think we'll get to a point where we can give you better information what to expect. And in this case, I can come in here and I can pull what data should be around, and that's sometimes you guys just want to know what am I going to be getting from these downloads? Well, we can get DTCs, we can get all this information at the time of the event, whether the person was wearing their seatbelt, the passenger, was the airbag light on, was there, any kind of information that would tell us with the car, there's a problem with the car maybe, or with where the driver's seat was positioned, because sometimes, if having it too close versus having it all the way back may be a question. Obviously, delta V's and G's, those are the big things that, whether you've got a biomech or reconstructionist, we're interested in. We've got performance of the car. So how quickly can it deploy an airbag, fire a seatbelt restraint for each position in the car. And then we get the more detailed data, the pre-crash information that we want. But like I said, what I love about this is I'll get a client that calls me and says, I want to do a download. What am I going to get? I can do this, send it to them right away, and give them that idea of what the report's going to look like. So we've looked up our cable. We know it's covered. We have all that set up. So we have this little setup here. We've got our ACM. We've got our specific cable for this car. We have the actual module that we use to communicate with these devices. We've got our power adapter. So I'm just going to plug all this up.
And Eric, this may be a quick answer. One of the questions that just came in says, where is the camera for the images taken by Toyota TechStream?
Typically, it's in the mirror. Sometimes they're in the grille. Sometimes they're on the side mirrors as well. The one in question that was going to be coming from the center, that whole kind of combined piece of the rear view mirror. So if you look at the frontal part, you'll see it, and it's a tiny lens. It's probably like 1/4 of an inch, but it's in there hidden. And I've seen Fords with 6 cameras on the front. Cameras at the mirror, camera on the sides, camera in the grille, camera in the center emblem. So it really just depends on the vehicle. All right, so we're going to match up our little cable specific for this module. Get that nice and seated. We're going to apply our power. And now we're ready to go. So we're going to do a new download. We got this nice long list, and it's kind of like all the logos that I posted in the early part of the presentation, just kind of shows you there's a lot here. And this is the real behind the curtain look of how it goes. This is exactly what we do when we're in the field. They're not all this easy. They're a lot more painful sometimes, digging out these modules, finding access, getting power, especially in the middle of nowhere. This is the preferred method in a nice AC, controlled environment with, nice computer and no issues. We're going to request it in. A lot of times this doesn't work. I can't remember if it worked last time I plugged this one in or not. So we're going to see if it'll communicate. We know the interface is working and it's clicking over here, so they're talking. We'll see if it actually populates for us.
Hey, Eric, while you're waiting for that, another question came in. It says, what does a typical Bosch CDR data port download cost?
We have a $350 fee, and then it's just our time. We typically try to work out a quote, talk about your budget. If we're going to be going to inspect a vehicle, we might as well try to download it because we're already going to be there. It's the same as, if we need to go by the scene and the vehicles we're able, maybe we'll swing by, do a quick download. But typically there's a $350 fee plus just our time, whatever it is to get to it and get it done. Yep, so as I thought, it's not going to work. So I got to manually pipe this VIN in, which just takes a sec. All right, so we got our VIN in, and we're going to fill out some of this basic information. We're going to give it a, random case number. We're not doing that, and we'll say our crash happened October 1st. So just a few days after the crash, which is always the best to get out there quickly, right, Jessica? All right, so here we'll just put in our notes. A lot of times this is where I'll put things like, what kind of download it is. So this is a direct module download. I hate this keyboard, so I'm just going to apologize in advance. We'll put where we're doing it at, which is put all the parties involved. We'll put the tire size, which I don't really know, but we're going to throw one in. And the importance of this is, when you're doing a download and getting this data, if somebody's changed the wheels and tire sizes, the reported wheel speed values could change. So we want to verify that whatever's on the VIN plate, whatever's on the data sticker that's on the car matches what's actually on the vehicle at the time. So if they match, we'll type if they match. If they don't, say that they don't, we'll put what they are, because then we're going to do some calculations to figure out how off can this be from what we're getting a reported speed on. So once we've entered all of the notes that we want, we're ready to go. Here's the exciting part. We tell it to go get the data, and we wait. Eventually, we're going to get a couple of these. And I see that question from John. Typically, we charge the travel time. Like I said, I try to do these in ways that is the most economic way possible. So if you've got other cases, or I'm going to be like immediately following this, I'm going to Pensacola for some inspections. When I got that inspection, somebody else wanted me to do a download in Pensacola as well. So I try to join these up so that I'm splitting costs as much as possible, because I want to make it as affordable for you. I have to get access to the vehicle. If you're going to want any kind of complete evidence preservation, we need to see the vehicle anyway. We need to take pictures of it. We need to scan it, whatever we're going to do. If it's something where you just want the download, you can ship them, like this module here. You could have the module removed by a mechanic and shipped to us, and we can do the download and we can ship it back. And that's, then it's all of, you're seeing how long this takes. It's probably 20 minutes at the most. Take some pictures, do this. So we've recovered our data. But we can't do it remotely. We have to have somebody physically in person to plug in if that's the case. All right, so we're going to save our recovered data, and we're going to save that.
Eric, there was another question
Okay.
through the chat. It says, how much does tire wear factor into the calculations such as speed?
Tire wear only matters if you're getting yaw or wheel spin, because that can inflate or change the wheel speeds, because these speeds are not necessarily read from the speedometer. They're read from wheel speed sensors, they're read from the engine, they're read from a module somewhere. And so the only time that this data can be affected or be skewed is if the vehicle's in a long yaw or the wheels are spinning faster than the car's actually traveling. We've seen some downloads where that happens, where we'll get a vehicle with minimal acceleration on the accelerator, but obviously with all the G's showing that it was in yaw, and all of a sudden the wheels speed picks up, and it's not, in line with the reported, throttle usage. So we can look at very detailed information to try to say, okay, we know what gear the car was in, we know the RPMs, we know, what the wheel speed should be, and if it's off, then we can calculate that.
And we do have another question.
Sure.
Sorry, are you done with your answer? I didn't mean to cut you off.
It.
Okay. Yep. We have another question. It says, are opposing drivers, opposing insurers willing to have the module extracted and sent to you? How would we make sure the module wasn't tampered with?
So if there was a deployment event, it is hard locked. So this one we've just pulled, that event is hard locked forever. There's no way to erase it. There's no way to modify it. What this software actually does is it interrogates, it's hexadecimal data. And so it says, it knows the VIN, it knows the vehicle I've selected, it pulls the hex file and translates it. So there is no modifying, accessing, or changing that data. It's literally pulling a copy and populating our automated report for us. So from an evidence tampering point of view, you'd have to cut this thing apart, take out the boards, resolder new boards. Like it would be very involved. And that's just something that doesn't happen. So typically what we do in instances where somebody else is going to send us one, we will video and or photograph it coming out of the box in the condition it's in, have it videoed the whole time while we're downloading it. So we're showing that we're not modifying it in any way, pulling the download, videoing us, put it back in the box, putting some type of chain of custody tape on it, showing the date, the time, a signature showing that we sealed it back up and we ship it back out. Opposing experts or opposing parties will send us stuff from time to time. It's typically a negotiation between you guys, the attorneys, on stipulating whether that's okay or not. These reports, put it this way, if the defense said, no, we're not going to send it to you, we're just going to send you the data, that's fine. Send me the CDRX file, send me the PDF, the report, we'll look at it. And if for some reason something looks off or we don't like it, then we'll figure out if we need to look at it in person, plug in and download it ourselves. But I have no issue with them just providing us the file because, again, there's no way to really change it.
And there is a follow-up to the tire wear factor
Sure.
question. It says, is there a difference in diameter between a new tire and a well-worn one? Does that variation affect calculation of wheel speed, etc., to the point where it is statistically significant to your calculations?
Typically, no. And just because, like when you buy new tires, I just had to put new tires on my truck. So this is a new one, recent one for me. The brand new tires on my truck had something like 15, 30 seconds tread new, or 17, 30 seconds, something like that. When you're that low on inches, it's not going to change the reported speeds to a point that really matters. It's going to be, I could do that math out for you, but it would be less than a mile per hour difference. And so in our world, that's not going to be significant enough to matter. If it was a drastic difference, then maybe, but it would have to be many, I would think, inches different. Because even when we do those adjusted calculations, so say like I said, you've got a certain tire size that's spec'd for a vehicle, and somebody puts some alternates on, and there's about an inch difference between the two, the diameter. It typically doesn't change the speeds that much. It changes it maybe a mile per hour or two at most, if not. And anybody in here that's ever had oversized wheels and tires put on a truck or something like that, your speedometer is typically off maybe a mile an hour, maybe 3 at the most. That's about the difference we're talking about here with these differences. So it'd have to be really significant to change that. Okay, so we've got our report, and it just shows the basics, and we can pull a PDF of it, which is nice. We can also pull a CSV. So if people are into that, we have a nice Excel sheet of it as well. And I'm just gonna open up the PDF because I can zoom in a little bit better. Okay, so there's lots of great information on these things, and I'm just gonna go and plug this while we're at it. So we're done with that. Lots of great information, and I'm gonna redact the VIN on this one, and I'm gonna make it available to everyone if you haven't ever seen one of these reports, so you can have one. I'm sure a lot of you have seen these and had cases with them. A lot of great information here, and a lot of explanations of what all this stuff means. I'm not going to read it all to you because I think it's, if there's something specific you want to know, it's probably there, but it discusses, when a positive sign or a negative sign appears in a certain value, what does it mean? That's always a great one, whether it's a steering input or an acceleration. I had a client yesterday, I was looking at a download with them, and I was like, well, there's 2 events, and this one's a rear impact and this is a front impact. And he's like, well, how do you know that? And I said, well, because the direction of the acceleration tells me, one or the other. So that's where you get this kind of information, so you can start to understand, okay, well, if the car's accelerated forward, then it has to be a rear impact. If it's accelerated backwards, it's got to be a frontal, right? So we can step through all of this, get lots of definitions. This is a new vehicle or a newer vehicle, so that it's 14 pages. Older vehicles, it's going to be a little shorter, not quite so detailed because they just didn't really provide as much. We have a lot of DTCs at the time of the retrieval, which makes sense because this was in a significant impact. And so we've got all these detections for events that probably happened at some point during this crash. So we have all these different codes that are thrown, which we can confirm a lot of this by seeing that tensioners are fired, that airbags are deployed, that crash zones are crumpled. we can start to kind of match all this up with the evidence that we see.
Eric, there's a couple of questions.
Sure.
First one says, does the report chart the vehicle speed leading up to the crash before any braking?
Yeah, and we'll get there. This download will have stuff, and we can just go to and look at it. There's standardized pre-crash data. So we're going to have, an idea. 5 seconds before is typically the standard now. We covered last time some potential other vehicles like older Nissans and things that maybe have up to 7 seconds pre-crash, but you're going to get about 5 seconds pre-crash normally. And that's going to give you the speed, the accelerator pedal position, RPMs. This one shows it twice, which is kind of interesting, and they pretty much always match. So I don't know why it's reporting it twice. Actually, they don't. That's interesting. We got whether the service brake's on. We also have the steering wheel input. So we've got, we can actually take this with this table of data, and we can plot this path for this vehicle to show you, okay, well, there was a slight curve one direction, then the road kind of straightened out, and it slightly adjusted back this way, or maybe the car was just moving around in this lane a little bit. These are only minute turns because this is degrees at the wheel. So 4 degrees at the steering wheel is only a tiny bit. And then you have, once the brakes come on, it's the oh crap moment, right? So something started happening that they started perceiving somewhere around here with about 1.5 seconds. And then all of a sudden, now we've got everything on. We've got a hard steer, we've got steer and then a back steer. And then we've got coming back the other way, which positive is normally left and negative is right. So something interesting happened here. It wasn't just a standard collision. And then we get the speed at impact, which is 29 miles an hour. So they slowed down a good bit from 53 to 29. And people will call this impact. People will call this the point of the crash. This is technically the term for this is algorithm enabled. This is when the vehicle determined I need to start deploying stuff. This is when the computer system was woken up. So all of this 5 seconds pre-crash, this is on a buffer that's running through the vehicle at all times, and it pulled this data because of this event. So when this event triggers, it says, okay, give me this data from 5 seconds ago, so I know what we were doing beforehand. And then a lot of times the download then will progress into all the post-impact travel, which is delta V's, G's, and all that kind of stuff. So, we read our codes, we see all these, which makes sense. One of the things we always want to look for is we have, how many event records do we have? This is event record 1. You could have multiple events. You could have multiple impacts that trigger events. Some can be deployment events, some might not be. It all depends on the accelerations needed to whether or not they meet a minimum requirement to report, some data. We like to see if it's complete. So, sometimes power gets cut and we don't have a complete event. And then we have an issue of whether we can trust all the data or not, because it's not a finalized report. This one is, so we're good there. What I mentioned earlier about us being able to timestamp crashes, we have an ignition cycle for the crash, which is 1,532 cycles. And so what an ignition cycle is so you get up in the morning, right? You go to your garage, your time to leave, you turn your car on, that's 1 cycle. Well, if you only go to work and then you come back, that's 2 cycles, 2 full cycles. So we can try to figure out, okay, if this number was drastically different, we'd say, on average, a person has on average this many cycles per week. And it was just a guess, it's an educated guess. And we just try to look back and see, does that line up with 6 months ago? Is that about right? If it's drastically different, if it's thousands off, then we know that may not be our event, right? Because it's just, there's too many cycles in between that it just doesn't fit. Tells us we only got 1 event. Driver was seat belted, passenger wasn't. The airbag light was on for the suppression for the passenger. The warning lamp was off, so that means the car was functioning properly. There was no fault before this crash. Huge delta V, 52 mile an hour delta V. That's a massive hit. That means the car changed velocity 52 miles an hour rearward in a few tenths of a second, which is massive. We also have a nice lateral 13 and 60 G's that were clipped. So what clipped means is the G's were actually still climbing on the accelerometer when the report cut off. So that means they experienced over 60 G's more likely than not in one direction and 60 G's in another direction, which it's either clipped due to time or it's clipped due to that's as much G's as the sensor can record, which means, again, significant impact. I'd have to look at this case to figure out what they got hit by, but I'd imagine they either went off and hit like a wall or they were hit by a big truck, because those are the only kind of things that generate numbers like this. Sometimes the biomecs want to know how quickly stuff deployed, so they know, what the accelerations were like, what the wave was like of energy, as opposed to just, what we look at for delta V. So we got that data there. We've already talked about our pre-crash. Here's our delta V chart. Kind of shows the same thing in chart form that we were looking at earlier about the max. It goes from 0 to, that's a lot, 80 kilometers per hour, or 60 miles, rough, almost 50 to 60 miles an hour delta V. And here's the reporting data. This is reporting every millisecond. So really, really quick. I mean, it's from 0 to bad in less than 100 milliseconds. Lateral delta V, same thing. We have our Gs, which are big. Our Gs going the other direction laterally. We even got a rollover event. So the car was pitched enough to make this car think that it could roll over. So it recorded that data as well. So we get the degrees and the amount of time that the vehicle pitched on its axis. And typically it's going to be the long axis. You get that angle. And that should be about it. Here's the actual hex. So this is what was actually pulled off of or mirrored from the other device. The only way to decode this is to have the cipher key that matches it, and the manufacturers don't release those. So this is the data that was pulled. We can contact the manufacturer sometimes and get them to translate this for us if we have an issue, but it's pretty much always dead on from CDR.
Eric,
so yeah,
we have another question.
Sure.
It says, can you erase prior events from the EDR? For example, I have a case where there was a crash and noticed there was another more significant crash a year before. I guess prior owner forgot to tell the buyer about the crash they had.
Yeah, you can't. So again, if it's a deployment event like this one, you can't erase it. There is no erasing it. It'll be on that car forever. Most times, if there is a deployment, most times the car's totaled, so it doesn't matter. But if it were to be fixed, they'd either have to deal with having that event on there forever, or they have to replace the airbag control module itself. Non-deployment events can be overwritten. And I've got a case right now where I'm dealing with that, where it keeps track of the events, and we have 2 non-deployment events, but they're labeled event 4 and event 3. So I know there was an event 1 and an event 2, but they're not there anymore. So it only has the ability to store 2 non-deployment events. So event 3 overwrit event 1, and event 4 overwrit event 2. So yes, it is possible to quote unquote erase them, but not in the manner of plugging a computer in and doing anything with it. It has to be overwritten by another event, and non-deployment events happen, if you hit a pothole, slam on your brakes, hit a curb, or have a non-significant crash, you can get a non-deployment event. And that's why, one of the first things I ask somebody, if I don't have a crash report and I don't know, did your client's airbags go off? Did the seatbelts retract and lock? Because if they did, then that's going to be a deployment event. There's going to be data there. If not, then that's I'll get the question, will there be anything on it? Unfortunately, we look at these and we try to evaluate this we can, but unless it hits that threshold, there's no way to know unless we plug in. And if we plug in, sometimes there's nothing on it. Sometimes there's non-deployment events.
All right, thank you. And there's another question. It says, from what model year would a Mitsubishi Lancer be expected to be equipped with this rich data?
Well, let's see. So it's not going to be before 2006. Some manufacturers, and it's not going to be 2006 either because it's not listed there, but some manufacturers have the ability to do downloads. And I think I showed one earlier in the presentation where we got I think it was a 2008 or 11 Frontier. I can't remember what. It was before CDR, Bosch CDR supported it. We had Nissan come down and they did the download for us and gave us the data. I know that Honda can do that as well. Mitsubishi can do that, or not Mitsubishi, Mercedes can do that. So it's very, very case by case. But for a Lancer, let's just see. So it's not 2007. Looks like 2007 or 2008 is going to be the first year. And there's always a caveat here, and it's this line right here. It may be supported, meaning in case they messed up and this one doesn't, whether it's a last year's ACM that they threw in the next year's car, which happens, I've gone to a Toyota before that was supposed to have a certain module in it. When we got to it, it didn't. And it was from the factory like that. And they just like they had spares laying around from the previous year. So they just threw it in and it didn't have any data on it. And so that's why they have this catch-all caveat here that says, you know, these elements may be included. Doesn't mean they will be, but they may be. But yeah, so 2000, what year did I say that was? I closed it. It was 2007 or 8. Would be their first year.
I think you said 8.
Yeah. But yeah, that stuff like that, you know, I have people call me all the time. I got a case, it's got this vehicle, will it have anything on it? And I just tell them that. And sometimes they call back and we get a case and do the work. At other times I tell them no, they don't have anything and they move on. So yeah, any questions about anything else?
Well, let's do this. Ginger, do you want to go ahead and do the other sponsors? And then in the meantime, if anyone has any questions, we can put them in the chat. And then when we're done with the sponsors, then we can go ahead and answer those questions. Ginger?
We caught her. There she is.
Absolutely. All right, guys, let's go ahead and I'd like to introduce you to our other 2 incredible partners that we've been working with. And I'm so excited to let you know that Connor McDovey with Stratejic is back with us. And as you guys know, they do some really interesting work over there. They can actually find some of these ex-employees from companies that you would never even believe existed. And they'll come in, they get the information that will totally turn your case around. I love working with Connor and them. They also work on, well, I don't want to give it all away. Connor, you just go ahead and tell us a little bit more about what you guys do. But I'm so glad that you're back with us today.
Well, we're glad to be back. You know, it's good to see everybody. But yeah, Ginger, for those of you who don't know, we here at Stratejic, we are an investigative research firm, and we have tailored our practice specifically around harvesting ex-employees of your corporate defendants, and then we turn them into insider witnesses. And the way that we do that is we produce what we call an EAL, or an ex-employee list. It's a list that contains name, job title, tenure, and then confirmed contact information of those ex-employees. And then from there, we can actually call and interview everybody that we've identified, find out really who's going to be the most cooperative and who's the most knowledgeable. You know, ex-employees, it's a really valuable resource that you have at your disposal. I'll give a great example. We did a case not too long ago against Mitsubishi, actually, and we were able to find the former crash test worthiness individual for Mitsubishi, and we were able to bring her into the fold. And she ended up being a hired expert, and she was able to write all the interrogatories. So it was really a detrimental tool that you have at your disposal. So I've got redacted copies of these ex-employee lists that I'd love to share. This one's from a nursing home case specifically, but we handle all types of cases within PI. And we're also capable of identifying potential class reps for you. So we have really broad capabilities. Feel free to reach out. I'll put my information in the chat box below. Thanks, Ginger.
Okay, perfect. And that's pretty amazing too, Connor. I get calls all the time, by the way, you guys, of people asking me, what is the name of that expert that does that, where they find the ex-employees? And I always just say your name, because what you're doing is so incredible. And for those of you guys who don't know Paul Latour, you'll probably see him out on the road, because we're all going to be traveling soon to a lot of other great conventions coming up. But definitely save Connor's information, because you never know when you're going to need to work with him. And like I said, I don't think anyone else is doing something like this. So it's pretty awesome.
Well, looking forward to seeing you soon, Ginger.
Same here. We miss you, Connor. Thank you.
Yeah.
And now, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and try to play a video. HMR is one of our incredible partners from the very start. They've been doing some amazing work over there. And Kyle is not able to make it with us today, but I've got a special video that I'm going to play. And Jessica or Eric, let me know if you're able to hear the sound. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick with everybody.
I can hear it. Oh, now I can't.
Yeah, I heard it at first.
There it goes. It's very faint though, Ginger.
Did you, in the options for when you share your screen, there's an option to share sound. And so it's up top on the Zoom bar on the menu all the way to the right. Unfortunately, I can't see that. But it's one of the drop-down menus, and there's an option to share sound.
So much for the opportunity to talk to y'all.
All right, I'm hoping you guys were able to hear some of that. But anyway, I'm going to put, as well as Ted, we're going to put some information so you can reach out to Kyle over at HMR. But again, he's another person that you want to keep in your Rolodex on your speed dial because they do tremendous work over there. So big thanks to Kyle and HMR and their entire team. And Ted will be joining us soon because we'll be doing the great coffee giveaway at the end of this webinar. So for now, I'm gonna go ahead, Eric, we'll hand it back over to you. And if anyone has any more questions, be sure to put those in the Q&A box for Jessica. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ginger. I don't see any additional questions, but I do want to point out Eric did put his contact information in the chat box. I do highly recommend him. I'm using him on my cases that I have myself. So please check him out. If anything that you saw today, you have any questions on, you can always reach out to him afterwards as well. And if that's all the questions, I don't see any in the Q&A and I don't see any in the chat box. So Eric, thank you very much for your time and being here today. If you want to say a few final words for everyone, go ahead.
Absolutely. And, it's my pleasure. For people that don't know, Q Forensic, we're based out of Tallahassee, Florida. So I'm not sure, how many people realize or know that. After the last webinar, I got 3 or 4 different cases from all over the country. So, thank you to Connectionology for that because it's phenomenal. And we are fully staffed with lots of consulting engineers and other experts that we offer lots of things besides accident reconstruction. Accident recon is just kind of the bread and butter, but we're happy to be here. We're happy to present, and this has really been a fun venture for me because I love talking about technology and it's in the way it's affecting what we do.
Super interesting. Thank you for your presentation the last time and for today. Ginger, if you want to go ahead and take over from here.
All right, let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Ted with HMR, who's going to do a special coffee giveaway. And then if you guys are free, you should definitely look into the webinar we have on Thursday and sign up. We've got John Romano, we've got Alejandro Blanco, an incredible trial lawyer who works at the Blanco law firm, but also with trial structure. So be sure to sign up for that because you're going to learn a lot. And then I will work on adding the rest of the webinars for the remainder of the month on the website so you can sign up. But I can't thank you enough, Eric and Jessica. This is great information. After this webinar, I will be able to email you all of their contact information, including the second part of the slides. But for now, I see Ted is with us. Ted, you're here to bring some joy to everyone's day, and I can't wait to see who the winner is.
Yes, I'm excited to announce that the winner of the 4 bags of coffee is Scott McLuhan out of Harriman, Tennessee. I hope I got the name of the city right.
Yay! Congratulations, Scott. All right. Well, he's going to be enjoying some coffee today and quite a bit of it too. So feel free to share it with your firm or your family. But Ted, we always think this is such a wonderful thing that you guys do for all of our attorneys. And don't forget, if you didn't win today, maybe you'll win on Thursday. Congratulations to Scott. And then Ted, thank you for all that you guys do at HMR. Is there any announcements that you'd like to make while you're with us?
I know, so we're actually going to be having an event with Stratejic out at ATAA. So if you're coming out there later this week, look for an HMR folks or the Stratejic folks and inquire about the honky tonk that we're putting on. So it'll be a lot of fun.
I don't think anybody can pass down a party, Ted. And you guys throw a great one. So thank you to you and everybody that you work with for the good work that you continue to do. We look forward to seeing you out on the road too. And I know that you guys are coming back as our major partner in Nashville, which will be May 6th to the 8th. I would tell everybody watching, go sign up and book your room now because it's going to sell out. Nashville is going to exceed your expectations and it will be even better than what we did this year. So mark that date on your calendar. Erich and Jessica, do you guys have any last minute comments before we head out today?
I just want to thank everyone who came to our last presentation, everyone who came out today. Thank you. And Erich, thank you as well. Ginger, thank you too. And Ted and John, who thank you.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for watching our part 1, part 2. We will upload this to our Connectionology YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe so you can stay in the loop. And I hope everybody has a wonderful remainder of their day. Thanks again to all of our partners and especially to you, Jessica, and thank you, Erich.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.